Cool. So Megan, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to talk to me about what it is you do at GitLab. So if you'd like to go ahead and give yourself a brief introduction and we can kind of kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Meghan Maneval. I am the manager of risk and field security here at GitLab. I've been here just since the end of July, so a couple months. So I'm really enjoying my time here. So thanks for having me here.
Cool. Awesome. And welcome. Uh,
Thanks.
so probably best if we start and just talk about what is risk and field security in the context of compliance at an organization.
Yeah, it's funny because I think risk, people have a general understanding of risk, but field security is one of those terms that most people don't know. We combine them here at GitLab to kind of form a holistic team that handles internal and external security risks. So focusing on the field security side, you can kind of think of that as like customer security or customer risk. So we act as that point of contact with our customers or our prospects throughout the sales and renewal processes. We know that our customers are going to have questions about security, and it's really our job to alleviate those concerns and questions and make sure that they're comfortable using GitLab and contracting with us. Our second function is really sort of the mirror image of that, which is vendor security. So we look at the vendors that GitLab contracts with, and we do basically what our customers do to us. We evaluate that vendor, we identify any risks that might be associated with it, and then help the business understand if that risk is acceptable or not. And then our third main function really has to do with the internal security operational risks. So those are really more of like your tier 2 escalated risks. And we identify those a lot of times through just some ad hoc risk assessments. And also we have a annual risk assessment process that we do there. So
Gotcha.
a little bit
Yeah.
about our team.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that. And so I think the next obvious question is, in your opinion, or how would you articulate to someone the value that your team adds to GitLab?
Yeah, so I think we have kind of two main avenues for that. So first, we can talk about our value to the greater security department. We have a huge security department, different teams, security, response, incident response, vulnerability testing. I mean, you name it, we have a team for everything. And it would really be impractical if other GitLab team members or our customers had to go directly to those teams to get that information. It would throw off their whole processes. They'd take more time answering questions. So I would hope that my fellow security managers would agree that our team adds value in that we act as sort of that shield between those external requests and the security department. So we try to answer and triage, let's say about 95% of those requests that come in. And then if there's a couple things that we do need to escalate to the other security managers, it's a much more reasonable impact on their teams. So hopefully my fellow managers agree with that. But also for GitLab as a whole, we really look for things that could negatively impact our growth, right, and our goals. So I think of it similarly to some of your car's safety features, right? We all know nowadays you have, your backup camera, your lane assistance, you have all these doodads and stuff that keep you safe. And that's really what we try to do. So Sid is driving this car. He wants to move fast. He wants to, hit those curves and just go. But having us in the background that identifying what could go wrong, we help make that car go faster. So if you think of us, field security is like your insurance. We identify those new things that are out there that could impact you. Maybe your third-party security is your, your lane assistance, right? Or, don't go into this lane, you could get hit. And from operationally inside, we're your check engine light. We're the ones who are going to identify that risk and say, hang on a second, Sid, we got to fix this. Before you make that road trip, you need to change your oil. So I think that having us in the background allows GitLab to grow and to go faster because we're like that security net there.
Yeah, that's perfect. That makes perfect sense as well. Can you tell me a little bit, kind of on that note, as a follow-up, either some sort of anonymized anecdotes or maybe specific examples of, how your team helped to maybe shorten the sales cycle time or won favor with the customer or sort of those outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I think this is a really great benefit of GitLab, is our transparency. I've worked for companies in the past where we had to do a lot more work on the field security side, answering those customer questions because the self-service resources just weren't there. And we've actually, I mean, I've only been here 2 months, but I've probably heard 4 or 5 times from whether it's our, the account manager, the SA, saying like, hey, the customer was really, excited about our customer assurance package, right? We have a web page that publishes all of our policies and procedures. Here's all of our control testing. Here's our SOC 2 report. And we've heard that back from customers that it really speeds up their due diligence process because all of our documentation is ready to go and in one place. And so that's really where we like to hear that, because that's one of our goals is, increasing that revenue and supporting the sales team to help the organization grow. So being able to hear that feedback has been really great, really solidifies that.
Gotcha. And so you mentioned one of the nice things about GitLab is the transparency. So let's talk about the not so nice. Like, what do you find to be most challenging about working within GitLab in this compliance context?
Yeah, so it's the same answer. It's the transparency. I think it's ironic because it is a huge mindset shift when you come to an organization as transparent as GitLab. Most organizations, they want to keep their security information close to the chest to avoid, potential downfalls. I love the model that Sid has put in place, and I love the fact that we can give our customers those self-service resources there. But I also think that, it's hard for a lot of our customers security teams too to recognize that they're almost like they're digging more. They want to know like, well, what's the catch? What's the thing you're not sharing? And so sometimes I see them dig in a little bit more because we're transparent. It's like that double-edged sword. But I think it's really awesome. Also, our product really aligns well, so that our customers using our product can use our product for security the same way we're using our product for security. So we're leading by example. And so I think that while transparency can be great, it's, it waffles back and forth on whether it's a blessing or a curse some days.
Yeah, totally get that. I have definitely felt that pain myself for different reasons where it's an adjustment, but then like once you get used to it, it's still an adjustment. Uh,
Exactly.
and so let's talk about you as the professional for a second. And so what are the types of things that you think about after work? And I know we want to try to separate work life, but like some of us are really passionate or like there's problems we
Yeah.
want to solve. And so what are those problems for you that are annoying or frustrating or things that you think about when you're not at work?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm definitely one of those people who my mind never really shuts off. Don't get me wrong, I do take my time to step away from work, but what I mean is a lot of times I'll do my best work or my best thinking when I'm not sitting at my desk. I might be out in the kitchen making dinner and I think like, oh, I have a really great response for, this question that I got, or I have a really great idea on how to apply this risk treatment plan. And so I think that, even sometimes talking to my family, they'll give me a great idea. And I think that that's valuable in your work-life balance. I also think the fact that I'm a people manager also carries over after hours. I think about my team, often and what I can do to support them. So if I'm reading a book or an article, I might think like, oh, this would be a really great resource for this person. They told me in my last one-on-one, they were challenged with this. Let me help and figure out a way. So I do think about them a lot. I think about my work a lot, but I don't know that it's necessarily active. Sometimes it's just passively like, oh, this would be a great addition or a great, resource for someone. Especially hiking. I think I come up with my best ideas when I'm out hiking by myself. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's relatable. I think some of the best moments of clarity I've had is when I've just finished prepping lunch and I'm sitting there just
Mhm.
trying to relax and it's like, oh, that one thing, I just had an epiphany.
Yep.
Hiking, I'm usually trying to like gasp for air, but it's a different issue.
Yeah.
So how about,
First 10 minutes of hiking. We'll go with that. After
yeah,
that
first
one.
10 minutes. Yeah, as long as the grade is decent, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how about, so if we kind of abstract up a layer to kind of organizational level. So companies, regulated organizations that are using GitLab,
Mhm.
what do you feel their biggest challenges are going to be using GitLab?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We've had a lot of conversations lately about some of the regulated markets, because oh my gosh, the compliance requirements, it's extremely complex. Depending on the industry that that customer is coming from, there could be one, there could be more new requirements that we just haven't gotten in the past. And I hate to say that as a, we've never been asked for this, but to some degree you have to rely on that. We provided compliance information for the industries that we knew our customers lived in. And we've made changes over the last couple of years. I'm sure you've seen with our new SOC reporting. We're making steps to provide, again, that transparent and self-service information. But I think the biggest challenge that we have, and in turn our customers have, is really identifying what those requirements are. And then also recognizing that there's two sets of customers. We have on-prem and we have, self-hosted on-prem, and then we have SaaS customers, and those requirements are going to be different. And so really it's just having those conversations with the customer up front and understanding what is the requirement for your industry? What is the requirement for your instance? Is it going to be with us? Are you self-hosting? And then crafting what that security plan looks like. I don't think there's a customer out there that has the exact same security configurations, but that's our job at GitLab, is to help them meet in the middle and figure out what are your requirements and how can we support them. And so I think it's just, like I said, having those conversations early on with our customers and understanding what their needs are.
Yeah, that all makes sense, and it actually reminds me of a follow-up question there, which is, and I'm not sure how to ask it, so I'll just kind of fumble through it. But
Okay.
generally speaking, it's I think it's difficult to delineate between the requirements that an organization has because they're just maybe a risk-averse entity and maybe they're a little bit more
Mhm.
strict than the actual compliance frameworks requirements. SOC
Yeah.
2 has generally non-prescriptive requirements, and so that degree in which a company meets that can vary. Do
Right.
you find that it's always clear when you're trying to meet a company's risk profile versus a compliance requirement, or is it oftentimes ambiguous?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I don't think that there often is a clear line sometimes. Because if you think about it, let's just pick healthcare, right? Let's pick HIPAA. That's the US compliance framework. So if you're an organization and you're in healthcare and you say we have to be HIPAA compliant, okay, but that means different things to every organization. The controls that that organization puts in place to become HIPAA compliant are unique to that organization. And so that's why a lot of times if we have a customer who would just come forward and say, hey, is GitLab HIPAA compliant? Well, that's not really a yes or no question, because that can mean different things to different customers. And so that's why we go at that higher level with the control frameworks that are more, I don't want to say ambiguous, but they're a little bit higher level, and it allows our customers the ability to customize at their level, but know that the spirit or the intent of the control is still being applied at GitLab. So that's been our approach a lot of the times, is to kind of up level that and say, here's how we address that particular control family, or that particular concern, without necessarily getting into the weeds of each and every requirement.
Gotcha. Yep, makes sense. So I want to ask you about, it's kind of coming back to our start of our conversation about you as the professional.
Mhm.
So can you elaborate on how much time or like how long have you been in the compliance space? And as a follow-on, what would you tell someone who's maybe considering getting into the space, or maybe even, actually, let's start with those and then I'll have a follow-up. I don't want to front load it
Okay.
too much.
Okay, no problem. So essentially my entire career, I've been in some form of security or compliance role. I started right out of college as a IT auditor for an insurance company. I'm not going to say how long ago that was, but that was my first job in compliance. I then worked for a while as an auditor and then a security manager for a credit union, and then kind of worked my way through various roles within security. I was in charge of incident response at one point. I was the technical manager for security, for vulnerability management. risk management functions, and even dabbled a little bit in network and voice configurations at one point and leading a network team. So a lot of different roles. And I think that kind of leads into what your second question was, is kind of advice for the next generation, if you will, is learn as much as you can about, or I should say, learn enough about a lot of different things. You don't have to be an expert in every single control family. You don't have to be an expert in every compliance framework. But if you understand the intent or the spirit of a lot of those areas, like I understand encryption, but if you needed me to like look at, algorithms and ciphers, and no, I don't know what you're talking about, but I know enough about encryption to speak intelligently about it and to, work with our customers on what their requirements are. And so if you're interested in a career in compliance, I think that that's a good way of looking at it, is learn a little bit about a lot of things, and that'll really aid you going forward. One of the other things too that I would recommend is finding someone experienced in the field and aligning with a mentorship. I've done this fairly often with graduates from my alma mater, as well as just other folks within the industry. Shameless plug, if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, it's Meghan Maneval. I am happy to accept that connection and help with whatever questions anyone has, or potential mentorships in the future. And really too, joining some of those like LinkedIn groups specific to compliance has been very beneficial as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for all that background. The final question I have for you, which was the follow-on,
Okay.
is like one of the reasons I wanted to do these videos is to help build empathy, because I think oftentimes the stigma holds true where non-compliance professionals feel like they're at odds with compliance professionals, despite the value and the path that they're both on to protect or serve or build value in the business, right? And so if there was one thing that you wish your non-compliance professionals or peers knew about your job that you felt might help build that empathy, what would you say to them?
I think I would go back to the analogy that we talked about earlier with the car, and just remember that if your car didn't have brakes, you wouldn't be driving 70 miles an hour, right? Where are your brakes? We're your backup. Okay. We're there to help you. So don't neglect your brakes, get your brake pads changed, but just remembering that, yes, we do inject a bit of friction into some of our processes, but that's intentional. We want to inject ourselves into that vendor selection process to make sure that we're not trying to slow it, but that everybody's looked at all of the risks associated. Sometimes you get so excited, like, oh, this vendor's great, and you get those rose-colored glasses and you don't see it. So just remember, we are here for a purpose. We're here to help. We're people too. So just remember that. But no, I haven't honestly felt too much pushback. There's questions. Obviously, there's going to be questions, when we ask for things. But just remember, we're here to help and support GitLab as a greater organization.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for that answer. I think that's perfect. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up for me. Any last comments or questions for me before we close out?
I just want to thank you so much for highlighting my team. I certainly couldn't do it alone. And for those of you at GitLab, if you've had any interactions with Devin Harris, Jennifer Blanco, Steve Trung, they're amazing. Feel free to reach out to any one of us. We'd love to continue conversations about this. And thanks so much for having me, Matt.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan.